Hey MGTOW guys, my name's Dave Morrison. I'm one half of a YouTube channel called Blue Collar Logic. My partner Jason and I weigh in on issues from a conservative libertarian angle. We started on Facebook, but a video I made called #HeToo inspired a firestorm of hate from feminist groups. Facebook responded by changing the settings of our 80,000 followers so that they were no longer notified when we posted, and that killed our Facebook channel. That video was in no way anti-female. It was just honest. Everybody was talking about how women are hurt and damaged by men, so I talked about how men are hurt and damaged by women. Of course I was silenced and the page shadow banned. But YouTube is primarily a male domain, so when we moved over here and reposted that video, it got 320,000 views and almost no blowback. My 9-part series Taking Down Modern Feminism also did pretty well. Why do I tell you this? Because I want you to know that I understand your position and that I don't dismiss you in any way, especially not in the way that Jordan Peterson did.
I don't want to have anything to do with women. It's like you're a pathetic weasel. That's the same statement.
He did apologize for this statement, sort of, but Professor Peterson may well have a blind spot in this area. After all, he married his childhood sweetheart, and by all accounts, theirs is a devoted relationship. Peterson does not have a personal history marked by rejection, friend zoning, or a divorce that left him financially crippled and emotionally bruised. I've had all of those things. I am here to make a case against the MGTOW movement, but I'm not here to diminish anybody, and certainly not to call another man a whiner because he's been wounded and is open enough to talk about it. I became aware of men going their own way on the comment threads that accompanied my anti-feminism videos. Sometimes it was a reasoned invitation for me to join up. Sometimes it was just a single word in caps, MGTOW. One of these fellows found me on Facebook and we've become friends. Seeing how his mind works for a couple of years has provided me with a decent picture of a MGTOW guy. He's smart, articulate, capable, a little bit of a tech nerd, and in my view, the kind of guy a lot of women would love to pair up with. But we'll come back to Paul. Most of what I know about MGTOW has come from a number of videos I've viewed, and from probably 100 detailed comments on Quora. A year or so ago, I did a deep dive. I already knew about the men's rights movement, but this was the first I'd heard about incels. Red pilling is mentioned a lot. I had related that to the walk-away trend and political party switching. I assumed that its usage in and around MGTOW connotes a general awakening from society's illusions. If I mix all this together, I come out with a strong impression that MGTOW is largely a reaction to late model versions of feminism and the general tendency of the left to dismiss masculinity. MGTOW also seems to reject traditional female roles. Still, I'm assuming that most of you are not voting Democrats. The primary gripe seems to be that men are expected to live in service to women. We could debate whether or not society favors women, but there's no doubt that government does. Courts are government, and they do tend to punish the male half of any dispute between a man and a woman, whether that be divorce, child custody and support, or something as hopefully rare as a sexual assault charge. During the Me Too panic and the Kavanaugh hearings, we were told in no uncertain terms that women must be believed, period. That if a man is accused by a woman, he is guilty. If that's not a full-blown descent into madness, I don't know what is. An egregious example would be the charges that result when a man and a woman have sex, both drunk as hell, and later on she decides that it was rape because she was impaired. So her irresponsible drinking absolves her of culpability while his drunkenness increases his culpability. Her consent is negated by the drinking while the man's consent is transformed into predation. Will we now apply this double standard to drunk driving? I hope not. As you can see, I live in a motorhome in a yard I rent. Living this way is a money-saving strategy partially born out of the financial stress of a divorce I didn't want. My ex-wife and I are friends now, but at the time she did throw me under the bus as she pursued what she felt was a better option. I'd be lying if I told you I was crushed. The romance had gone out of the thing for both of us, but we both took a tremendous hit financially and only one of us got to vote on that. We had 2 incomes going to pay for 1 house, 1 health insurance policy, 1 car insurance policy, a phone plan, a cable TV agreement, etc., etc. And because my ex no longer wanted to be married, we now had 2 of every bill and no more money with which to pay for it all. I lost my marriage, my kids, my shop, and almost everything else I loved about my life at that time. And I had to send a chunk of my income to her. So yeah, I got effed over. But let's be clear. We'd already both been effed over by a shitstorm of bad ideas. The romantic fairy tales we'd consumed as children. Consumerism's ubiquitous calls to buy more stuff. The self-centeredness of the me generation. And the entitlement thinking of modern feminism. The troubles all sprung from a deep misunderstanding of what men and women are and how best we can work together. Here's a quick story to illustrate that. My ex put on weight during both of her pregnancies, and that weight never really came off. As a result, she didn't trigger my male desire like she once had. Once a year, I would say, look, I want you to be my sweetheart. I want to focus on you and the kids, but I have to be able to look at you and feel lucky to be married to you. Come on, just meet me halfway. Her answer was always the same. What I look like shouldn't matter to you. This is what left-wing feminism has ripped out of our culture by the roots, the understanding that men and women are wired differently, particularly when it comes to how one relates to the other. Men were now expected to imitate women while still fixing things and lifting heavy objects. The real women would let us know if and when our sexual services were needed. And in the meantime, we owed it to them to hide our own feelings and pack up and leave when we weren't needed any longer. But keep the checks coming, okay? Oh, I get it all right. But let's not pretend that my ex was not vulnerable to me deciding to split and leave her with all the debt and all the child-rearing expenses. To be completely honest, my wife could have chosen to marry a guy with a lot more money than I. And if I'd been a better earner, she might well have found a little more inspiration in the treadmill. So I wasn't exactly hitting high marks either. This is where we get real. I stand in opposition to all denial of human nature, male or female. So when I was recently on a thread with Paul and one of his MGTOW buddies, and they protested the prerogative of women to be pursued, I saw a mirror version of my ex-wife's inability to understand male arousal. Why do we have to give chase? Why do they always get to decide what happens? It's not fair. Right, it's not fair. And why do birds get to fly while we have to walk? A big part of growing up is to see the world as it is and to stop taking that as some sort of personal affront. A woman is typically smaller, weaker, slower, and more easily injured than a man. She lives every day with a vulnerability that we can only imagine. Sure, you and I have been punched in the face and beaten up a few times. That happens to boys growing up. But even at my age, I can walk through a parking garage at 1 a.m. and not be afraid. If there are a couple of young dudes leaning on a car near mine, I can always just say, "What happened? Did they throw you guys out of the saloon again?" Or some other masculinity-affirming joke. I almost never feel like I might get rolled, and I never feel like I might be abducted, gang raped, and murdered. Never, ever, ever. But a woman has to consider that possibility frequently. She also has to consider the possibility that she'll become bonded to a scoundrel who will bolt when she's had their third kid and she begins to lose her looks. When a woman plays hard to get, she's putting the onus on you, no doubt. But put yourself in her place. Consider what she has to lose if she bets on the wrong guy. If you show your interest and begin to court her, you are being tested. I hate being tested. I know you do. Suck it up. Why would a woman want to tie her fate to yours if you can't handle the challenge of taking her out on a half-dozen dates before you make your move? Really? That's too much for you? But why should the man have to pay? Resources, brother. If a woman is expected at some point to give you exclusive access to her, then knowing something about your financial health is a reasonable part of her equation. She's trying to select the best guy that she can get before she gets locked in with kids, shared property, and whatever family obligations and just plain baggage you might bring to the table. She's testing your wallet, your generosity, and your protective instinct. Also, she's testing your understanding that males and females have different roles. Her letting you pick up the tab is her allowing you to show your stuff. I mean, why else do we work so hard if not to get the best women? Here's where we get really real. The women you are mad at are the prime specimens. You all know half a dozen less glamorous women who would be thrilled to go to a movie with you. Very happy to hang out with you whenever and wherever. But you don't want those women, do you? You want the little chick with the hot body and the bubbly personality who can light up a room with her smile. You want the girl who would change your life. The one that would instantly bump your own status up by a few notches, just to be seen with her. People would stare and wonder what kind of mojo you have that you could possibly land a babe like that. These are the women you're mad at. You're mad at them for using you, but you're also mad at them for not letting you use them. The desirability that they possess and won't share with you is the very requirement that you demand from a woman in the first place. And since you haven't been able to land your dream girl, you've decided to take yourself off the game board. As I told Paul and his buddy, you cannot win if you do not play. You'll say that you resent being forced to play games. I'll say that everything worth having has to be earned. And you'll say that your own individual growth is the only thing worth earning. And I will say, great, now just admit that you're still in the game. Because much of what you guys are doing is exactly the kind of thing that will make you more attractive to women. By declaring yourselves uninterested in them, you are making yourselves unattainable. You're playing hard to get. Many of you are hitting the gym, upping your earning power, and developing the discipline that you know will eventually make you magnetic. The discipline that will enable you to be clear-headed and confident in situations where all the other dudes are groveling at the feet of the local beauties. It's not a bad strategy, but be careful. It doesn't take too long to become rusty and awkward around females. They pick up on that like a Geiger counter. Self-mastery does imbue a man with a certain charisma, but the so-called stink of death can cancel that out. Let's you and I be honest with ourselves. Guys like us are probably not going to get girls from the A-list. A wise man once told me that my unhappiness lived in the gulf between my expectations and my results. He taught me that if I was willing to raise my performance while lowering my expectations, I could close the gap considerably. My advice to you is to widen the scope of what you find attractive. Turn off the free porn channels, or at least start to include less perfect women in your viewing. You can reset your erotic preferences quite a bit. If you like busty blondes but the available women are skinny brunettes, work on eroticizing that type. Train yourself not to be too specific in your tastes. This is right up your alley. The world is full of perfectly lovely women who are just not so obviously hot. Date those women. They have not always been the center of attention. Their expectations have not been skewed by 1,000 guys throwing themselves at their feet. Look, I dig a bombshell as much as the next guy, but I've learned to appreciate many forms of beauty, and I tell you, the 6s and 7s have usually done a lot more work on their personalities than the 10s. They've been through rejections just like we have. They get it. They know how that feels. Look, stop resenting every woman for the actions of the few out there who really are manipulative gold diggers. It's not accurate and it's not fair. It's the same thing that women are doing who assume that all men are predators and all masculinity is toxic. So no, I'm not about to stop playing the mating game at whatever level I'm still allowed into it. A world without women is, to me, not one even worth visiting. All of the self-improvement in the world rings hollow without the respect and admiration of people who know you intimately. And there are ways that only a woman can bond with a man. There are also ways that only a woman can help a man become his best. Because their minds are different from ours, we need their input in order to reach a balanced sort of wisdom, just as they need our input. Surround yourself with people who share your interests and your values, both men and women. And stop with this blanket rejection of all male-female relationships. You're on the right track in so many ways. Don't blow it by coming off as paranoid and defensive. All right then, I wish you well. Please share this video with anybody for whom you think it might be helpful, and leave a comment down below. Now, let's hear Dr. Peterson's heartfelt apology. Sort of.
Yes, I think I was a little dismissive of the men going their own way, because I think I called them pathetic weasels, and I had my reasons for that, and they have what I would regard as an undue influence over relatively bitter and resentful young men who haven't had great success in the dating market, and that is not good for those young men.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.